There's been a lot of talk about due process lately, but little of it seems to be informed by proof or evidence. Now, 5 of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights are called the Due Process Amendments. With a little bit of research, we can not only be sure of what due process is, but how the Constitution protects our rights to it. So we'll discuss that next on the Constitution Study.
Neighbors and have a few good friends. Every day we're everyday Americans. Oh, every day we're everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution. Teach Rights and Generation Be Free. I'm glad you could join me today. Again, there's been a lot of talk about due process, especially revolving around illegal aliens and deportation and stuff like that. A lot of people are talking about it, but they seem to not understand what it actually is, much less how it's protected by the Constitution. So I thought it would be an appropriate time to discuss the details. Now, if you want to check my work, well, you can go to the website, constitutionstudy.com, find this article, and I have links to all of my source materials so you can double check it. Now, I'll talk more about the websites and a couple of other things at the end of the episode, but for now, let's talk about these due process amendments. We all know that the Bill of Rights was created to, well, protect our rights. Since half of the amendments are known as the due process amendments, I think it's safe to say that due process is important to protecting our rights. If we're going to talk about the due process amendments, we should start by making sure we know what due process is. From the Free Legal Dictionary, we read, due process is an established course of judicial proceedings or other governmental activities designed to safeguard the legal rights of the individual. So due process is the protection of your legal and individual rights. Now, with that in mind, let's look at those due process amendments. While often described as protecting your right to privacy, that word does not exist in the Fourth Amendment because the Fourth Amendment is about so much more than privacy. It reads, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Privacy is generally defined by not being observed. From Webster's 1828 dictionary, privacy is a place of seclusion from company or observation. However, the Fourth Amendment starts with protecting you, your home, and your stuff. It makes sure you're not unreasonably searched or seized, from making sure you are free from danger of being taken by an enemy. The one question we really need to answer then is, what is reasonable? Well, according to Webster's 1828 dictionary, it's having the faculty of reason, endued with reason. Now, I was taught not to use a word in its own definition. Well, I've heard a lot of people describe it in many different ways. Based on the rest of the amendment, I think we can sum up reasonable as having some good reason to do something. For example, what makes a search or seizure reasonable? Well, according to the Fourth Amendment, having a valid warrant makes it reasonable. Why? Because in order to get a valid warrant, you have to have probable cause supported by oath or affirmation. Now, that sounds like a good reason to me, having evidence that shows that something has probably happened. And not just your word, but the oath or affirmation of someone who knows. This is important because lying under oath or affirmation is a crime. That seems pretty reasonable, but there's more. You see, the warrant has to be specific about where someone can search and who or what can be seized. These requirements protect more than your right to privacy, but your legal right to security. I'm sure we're all familiar with pleading the fifth, but there's so much more to this amendment. No person shall be held to answer for capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising out of the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to twice be put in jeopardy of life or limb. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. This amendment starts with what happens when you are accused of a serious crime. The government cannot simply charge you with a capital or infamous crime, a felony. Only a grand jury made up of citizens can actually charge you. The only exceptions are for military forces, including the militia or in actual service. That's because they are subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Also, you cannot be charged twice for the same offense. Of course, courts play fast and loose with this, claiming that both the federal and state governments can charge you with the same offense. Then there's your right to not be forced to self-witness. Notice, unlike what you see on TV, it's not a right against self-incrimination, but against self-witness. It doesn't matter if it's incriminating or not. You cannot be forced to witness against yourself. Again, the courts have taken this further with your right to remain silent. And don't forget one of my favorite clauses, your right to not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This is probably my favorite clause in the Bill of Rights because it doesn't just protect your life and property, but your liberty, your ability to live your life as you see fit without unnecessary external influence. The other thing the Fifth Amendment is known for is eminent domain. This protection says that the government cannot take your property unless it's for public use, in which case they must give you just compensation. Now, the Sixth Amendment is all about criminal processes. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right of a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusations, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Now, when you are charged with a crime, you have a right to a trial. Now, said trial must be both speedy and public. We often talk about a right to a jury of your peers, but your right is to an impartial jury. Furthermore, the jury must be in the state and district where the crime was committed. Now, courts make exception to the location when it can be shown that the accused cannot get an impartial jury. You also have a right to be informed of what you are charged with, to confront witnesses against you, and to compel witnesses in your favor. You even have the right to assistance of counsel. It's funny because we talk about a right to a lawyer, though that's not what the Constitution says. It says you have a right to counsel. But why should you only be allowed to pick your counsel from someone who has been to law school and a member of a private organization? Now, while the Sixth Amendment dealt with the criminal process, the Seventh deals with civil suits. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of a trial by a jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. One of the ways we petition our government for a redress of grievance, protected by the First Amendment, is a civil suit. When you sue someone or are sued by someone, you have a right to have the case decided by a jury as long as the value in question is greater than $20. And no, the Constitution did not allow for inflation. Furthermore, when a fact is tried by a jury, no other court can re-examine that decision. When a lawsuit decision is appealed, it's not the facts of the case that are reviewed, but the procedures used during the trial. Now, the last of the due process amendments is also probably the least considered. It's also the shortest. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. What is excessive bail or a fine? I guess that depends on what the crime is. For example, bail for a misdemeanor shoplifting charge shouldn't be as high as, say, first-degree murder. Similarly, what makes punishment cruel and unusual? Because I'm sure the victim's family might have a different answer than someone not involved in the case. Now, I'm sure there are things most people would consider cruel, but what if it was your family member that was harmed? Due process is crucial to protecting your rights. So why is it so often overlooked in preference of the sexier amendments like the First or Second? I can't tell you how many First Amendment cases I've reviewed that had nothing to do with that amendment. Rather, they were a case of being deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. As I stated earlier, half of the amendments in the Bill of Rights are dedicated to protecting your rights through due process. Maybe these amendments should be the sexy ones. These amendments focus on your legal rights that are designed to make sure the wheels of government don't run over us. For that reason alone, I think we should spend more time considering these due process amendments, not to mention the rights they're designed to protect. So what do you think now? Is this idea of due process a little more interesting to you? Is it a little sexier amendment, something worth time investing to study and understand? See, as I studied the Constitution, as John Jay suggested, and I learned more about my rights, I realized how important this concept of due process is. It's not about your day in court, at least not only your day in court. It's about making sure that when government or the courts are working with you, they are following a process that's designed to protect your individual legal right. Not a collective right, not a group right, not the society as a whole, your individual legal right. That's why it's so important. It's why the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment gets my dander going, because it's not just protecting your right to not be killed or to not be deprived of your property, but your right to live at liberty, to live your life as you see fit without unnecessary external influence. To me, that's the greatest protection we can have, and it explains why literally half of the Bill of Rights is about protecting your right to due process. So whether you're reading it in a paper or online or seeing it in TV, consider the Due Process Amendments. When you see a court case, don't jump to the First and Second Amendment. Maybe the Fifth or Sixth Amendment makes more sense. It's understanding this due process that protects our rights. And it's why I think everybody should read and study the Constitution of this country. It's why I wrote the book, The Constitution Study, Returning the Constitution to We the People, so that every one of us could better understand the Constitution. As John Jay said, every member of the state ought diligently to read and study the Constitution of his country, teach the rising generation to be free. We can do that, and it's easier probably than you think. More importantly, he said, by knowing their rights, they'll sooner perceive when they're violated, be the better prepared to defend and assert them. Now, you can buy the book wherever books are sold. You can buy it on Amazon, or you can go to the website constitutionstudy.com/shop and buy it from the store. If you buy it there, you can also get a signed copy from me. Now, that's just one of the ways you can support the work that we're doing here. For example, I found this great little course called The Miracle of America. It literally covers our history from the Pilgrims through the Founding Fathers. And it helps explain why the Constitution is written the way it is. I liked it so much I made a deal with the owner to get you a lesson absolutely free. Just go to constitutionstudy.com/1776 study guide. That's the numerals 1776 study guide. And you'll be taken to a custom landing page just for my listeners, where you can not only read up about the course, but you can enroll in a lesson on God's natural law absolutely free. God's natural law is the foundation of our unalienable rights, including our right to due process. And again, you get this lesson absolutely free. You get the downloadable study guide and an hour of content, audio or video, whatever you prefer, absolutely free. Your journey starts by going to constitutionstudy.com/1776 study guide and enrolling for your free lesson on God's natural law. So do so today. And have you considered using your cell phone to protect your rights? Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. Now, I joined them for that very reason, because they support organizations that are protecting our rights. NRA, Folds of Honor, and yes, even the Constitution Study. Go to patriotmobile.com/constitution and find a plan that works for you. They've got discounts for veterans, first responders, and even families with multiple lines. When you check out, use the code Constitution and you'll get free activation as well. Use your cell phone to protect your rights by going to patriotmobile.com/constitution, finding a plan that works for you, and then using the code Constitution at checkout to get free activation. I hope you enjoyed this discussion of the Due Process Amendments. I hope it encouraged you to maybe look a little deeper, do a little more research. I also hope it encouraged you to share this information with friends and family and neighbors. Maybe bring some of them along the next time we get together for the Constitution Study.
Love your neighbors and have a few good friends.